Hey friends, welcome back to Fantasy Awash. Today we are starting a new series where we are discussing religion in fantasy, and we are starting with one of my absolute favorites, which is the planet Lifeless in the Cosmere, and that book is Warbreaker. Let's jump in. Now, in order to understand the religion and the religious scope of what's going on Lifeless in our story Warbreaker, we kind of have to give a little bit of background as to what is happening politically. There is some contention that's been happening between two of the major city-states, and that is the city of Idris and the other city of Halandrin. Now, in Idris, the people are much more conservative, and in Halandrin, they are much more flamboyant. And on this planet, in both cities, there is something deeply connected to breath, and that is called chromatic breath, and we're going to jump into all of the religious aspects about Warbreaker now. We need to talk about breath and biochromatic magic. On the planet Nauthis, every singular person is born with one breath, and that is your choice to keep that breath or to give it away. Breath can be used to help enhance things visually, like color, experience, sensation. And when one gives away their breath, one loses that aspect and that ability of themselves. So breath is often actually used as a currency in this world, and people that are able to accumulate a lot of breaths are able to manipulate inanimate objects. These people are called awakeners. Awakeners are people that have accumulated a ton of breaths, and this can be 50, 75, 10,000, 20,000. There is one particular individual that has the most breaths, and this person is called the God King. But for the average person, you're only going to have just one, or you're going to have zero, having given away your breath. So for awakeners, they are able to breathe life into inanimate object. As I said, that could be into a pile of hay to create it into a person, but they can also do this into people that have already died. And this group is called the lifeless. Lifeless were once people. They've obviously since passed away. They are now corpses that have been reanimated by awakeners. Awakeners are then able to give them commands, tell them what to do, and they can't really fight back. So it's a convenient thing to have an army of lifeless working for you, because you don't have to feed them in the way that you would a live army, and they'll take command without giving you any guffs. So the lifeless are a very key part of a lot of awakening that happens on the planet of Malthus. Now, for one that has accumulated a ton of breath, their experience of life is much more vivid. And the way that that's often described is with color. Color is something that is integral to Malthus, and it is integral to the main protagonist of Malthus, because the more breaths that you have, the more vivid color looks. And for certain characters, their color can be manipulated through their hair, and it makes them distinguishable amongst other people. But it is a really key part of being someone that can awaken things, is that you go from feeling things at a very basic level to being able to experience things at the superlative all the time. Breaths are also intrinsically important to a group that is called the Returned. On the planet of Malthus, if someone dies in a way that is considered to be quite admirable and honorable, they're brought back as a deity known as the Returned. And for the Returned, they actually don't know how it is they died. Part of their existence as a returned is to figure out how they died, but they have to be given one new breath every singular week in order to stay alive. And the concept is that once they find someone who is worthy and a cause that is worthy, they will give up their final breath for that person, help them, save them, and they'll end up dying a second time. The Returned, however, are treated very much like deities. They are worshipped by the regular people of Halandrin. There's actually a pool in Halandrin, which is another religious aspect. The Tears of Edgil is a sacred pool where people come and hope to receive vision and blessings. A lot of the political life in Halandrin is very much fueled by the religious life, and this is why they are at odds with Idris, because Idris is a place that is highly conservative, does not believe in using biochromatic breath. They do not believe in the Returned, because the Returned are taking breaths from other people in order to survive, and therefore this has put them at odds with one another. In order to establish a peace between the two, one of the princesses of Idris is sent along to marry an individual known as the God King of Halandrin, and the God King is very important because of everyone alive, he has the most biochromatic breaths. The God King is supposed to be basically the top of the pantheon for the returned. He himself died when he was a baby, was brought back with a ton of breath, was resurrected. They're not necessarily sure why, and therefore is at the top of this pantheon of returned deities. At the beginning, we don't really know how many biochromatic breaths that he has. However, he is said to almost be luminescent because of how much he has. He has shades of color basically vibrating through him at all times of the day, and he is rarely seen by the public because he is such an elusive and mysterious figure, but he is still very important to the people of Halandrin and the religion that has been established, which is that of the returned. Warbreaker is a really unique study in terms of looking at religion and fantasy because the magic system and the religious system are actually one and the same in this world. Different people are able to access different abilities. However, it is a story of politics, religion, and faith and how they all interweave and how they intersect with one another in a really interesting way. And if we look at history as kind of an indicator of that, that has been the case for a lot of Western religion. If we look at the Middle Ages with the establishment of the Catholic Church, if we look at the Holy Roman Empire, there was only the intersection of politics and faith. They had to meet in the middle and they had to work cohesively in order to rule whatever countries were under their guard. And this is something that I think Brandon Sanderson does really well. I think the politicking is very appropriate when we are looking at histories of religious separation to groups that originally start under the same branch and then possibly verge out into different ones. If we want to look at modern examples or historical examples, we could look at Islam for that, and we could say the origin of the religion is the same. However, the branches of Sunni and Shia are very different, even though they start at the same point. That is kind of very similar to how things work on Nalthis. Their origin of their faith is the same because it is related to breath. However, they have very much broken off into two different sects. One is a conservative one and one is far more liberal. So I think that Sanderson did a very interesting job at looking at our world, looking for religious influence and seeing how he could integrate that into a story that is heavily magic based, but making it seem more political at the same time. Now, one of the things that is important to note about Brandon Sanderson, it's not necessarily important, but I think that it does add to the level of fascination, is that Brandon Sanderson himself is an active member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He's a Mormon, and he is one to incorporate religion quite religiously into his works, and each one is fundamentally different than the others, and I think that he is so creative in this way. But the concept of the returned, I think, is actually something that could maybe be equated to parts of Mormonism or Christianity as a whole, that when one has lived an honorable life, they will be rewarded in the next life and that they will be reborn, but they will be reborn in heaven. They won't have the same conditions placed upon them as they do in this story, but the concept of being reborn is there. We could also look at the cycles of karma and rebirth in the cycle of samsara for the religion of Hinduism. So really, there are a lot of modern and ancient religion influences, I believe, in Warbreaker, and that makes it an extra fascinating read. Let me know down in the comments below if you have read Warbreaker, if you loved Warbreaker. Warbreaker so far is my favorite Brandon Sanderson book, and I've read a lot of Brandon Sanderson in the past year. I am super interested in looking at religion in the Cosmere as well as religion in other fantasy novels. If there's one in particular that you would like to do a deep dive on or have me do a deep dive on, let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like this, please be sure to like and subscribe, hit that little bell notification so that you won't miss anything in the future. And if you want to follow me on Instagram where you can see what I'm reading live, you can find me at Fantasy Awash. As always, I'll see you next time. Bye!